It is spooky season as we record this, and everybody's got horror on the brains on the brains in some cases. And I've got comic books on the brain, as per usual,
Hmm.
but comics with a twist. Horror has always had a space in comics. I think the relationship between medium and genre goes as far back as the medium itself. And of course, there have been periods where there was a crackdown on the kinds of content you could see in comics. And so we lost horror for many, many years. I would say that it took until this last decade for horror to really find its footing in comics again. And we're seeing a genuine resurgence in horror comics. But my question is, with the resurgence of horror that we see in comics, but also in other spaces, is horror something that belongs in comics? Does horror work in comics with all of the different things that make horror click for you?
Okay, Swamp Boy, what do you got?
Swamp Boy. I think you mean Zombie Captain
Oh
America.
God.
Wow,
Ah,
dude, how you were ready with that
No, we
is
both had him on before you joined the call, Sean.
yeah, yeah. And somehow we both had
Should
it on before you joined the call. So,
what the fuck?
you should have told me. I would have prepped that bit. Damn.
uh, but I think that comics are an excellent medium for horror. I think they're one of those places that really excel. I forgot who it was we were having this conversation with, but the pacing of horror in comics is probably the key. You want to make sure that what you're doing and how you're walking somebody through the experience is to a lead up to a page turn, to be able to arrive at a moment that for them feels like there is no other way out. You have the advantage of music in a lot of situations for like things like movies, books. You have to use your own imagination for that. So I think comics is that perfect sweet spot where you're not fully guiding somebody to the scare necessarily, but you're also not leaving it completely up to their imagination. And so I think the the medium for it, be it in tone, you can literally have things kind of come out at you because it's in your hand. You can control, in my mind, the time, and so therefore the user's suspense, their own pacing to get to that moment, their own hesitation. So I think it's a uniquely strong medium for horror.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more of I have to retool my brain on what horror is. It's not the way horror works in film. You don't have sound. You don't have the the film timing is dictated by the creators of the film. Um, they can jump scare you. It's hard to get jump scared in a comic, at least for me. And I think there is that very personable and different by reader aspect that comics is. Every reader reads at different paces. So there's more that they bring into the medium that I think horror as a medium in comics is something that's so specific. And I think probably one of the harder things to do because you need to work with the medium itself. You could tell an Avenger story and just go through the pages. You need to pace things out in a horror book. But I think when I read it, when I read like Silver Coin, it shows like, oh, this they know what they're doing for a horror book. I'm feeling the craft there that I wouldn't necessarily feel in like, I don't know, an Iron Man comic. So I think there is just horror is great in comics, but it's different.
Yeah, you definitely can't go through the motions making horror comics because you really, really have to tailor it specifically in order for those moments to work. And I don't know this for a fact by any means, but it wouldn't surprise me if part of that is why we don't see a ton of mainstream like big two horror books. You have Hulk, which is a horror book in the sense that it's got monsters in it. It's not really trying to scare you or anything like
Mm.
that. And so when I think about horror in comics, I certainly don't think about, traditional style horror. I think about psychological horror, which is generally what I prefer anyways, because it's like, yes, we have all been jump scared before. I think, tying a quick, scary image to a sound that blasts your ear is really easy to do. Um, what's more difficult, at least for me, is to tell a story that's going to stick with you after you've engaged with it. And I have had that instance happen to me several times within comics. I think about Infidel a lot. World
Great
Tree,
book.
where I think World Tree is one of the best horror books on the market.
World Tree did the same thing some horror movies do to me, where it's like, nah, I can't do it. You know, I didn't read World issue 2 World Tree. I was like, no, I'm good.
And
Which
it's a yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, which for better or for worse, is a response to the book. It's a response to the art. Probably not the one they want, but at least made me feel something. It made me feel like, yeah, hard pass on that.
I just feel like there's a and I guess sticking on World Tree, but you can use that as an extrapolation. I feel like, you don't have to think about, okay, we got to get a scare here and a fright there. We got to keep that going. Like World Tree doesn't isn't like that. It is what it is. Like those things that freaked you out are what the book is. And they occur and they happen and they're awful, but there's also other stuff going on that's very interesting. So I love that book.
Yeah, and like horror in just a bigger sense of the word is kind of in the zeitgeist right now. Horror movies do very well, especially for the budget they have, because they're usually a smaller budget. So they usually make so much more money because of that. Um, so I almost feel like it's a shortcut for film, whereas comics, you need to know what you're doing. It's not a shortcut. It's probably the opposite, honestly. It's probably a harder thing to do for the medium. But I think we are in a boom for creator owned stuff.
Mm.
And the creators who want to actually work with the medium and play around with things like that. That's why you have your Exquisite Corpses, which is a bit of a slasher horror in some aspects of it. Um, that's why you have things, like Silver Coin or Swan Songs was a little bit of horror in that as well. But then you have like
Deviant.
your Junji Ito's too. Junji Ito is huge right now. Junji Ito is an IP. They had Hot Topic shirts for Junji Ito. Like it's big, and I think Ito is one of those creators that knows how to work with the medium. There are some pages that I've turned in a Junji Ito book where it's not a jump scare, but the page turn makes my stomach churn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's sure some of it's gross out stuff, but I think being able to depict that via art is impressive. Being able to depict somebody's entire face pores pussing out of like just it's disgusting. It's vile.
That's a great point, and I think that that's probably the thing that comics can most uniquely do,
Yeah.
in that if you go to the movies and you see something nasty on the screen, it's going to go away. Like they're going to show you the thing, then it's going to
Mm.
move on to the next beat. You don't control that.
Yep.
Sometimes you can see something horrifying in a Junji Ito or whatever, and you just sit on that moment and it's like, oh God, that's fucked up. And you can almost make that moment more horrifying for you than another person because of how long you sit with it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. It plays and takes advantage of the fact that it builds on mood, it builds on tone, and the advantage of a Juji Ito, for example, is his favorite thing is always like there's an undercurrent of uncomfortability, and it bumps up the moments where like, oh, weird shit's happening until this big climax. Um, and so for those things, it's incredibly effective. One of the things that I always think about is the this one page turn in Alan Moore and, oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name. The Lovecraft book,
Providence.
Providence.
Well, you guys are always talking about Providence.
Yes.
You
Dude,
creeps.
there's legitimately was a page where I turned it. It was a like a visceral image and chills down my spine. I had to put it down. I was in the basement at the time. I had to put it down and walked upstairs. I'm like, I need to move from where I'm at.
Can I put that on the screen? Can you figure that out?
I can figure out what page
No,
that was.
I
I
want to
haven't
know how
seen it in.
graphic it is.
It's not. It was just like
Okay.
in the perfect cross section of this was building up to this moment, and it's a reveal artistically so you can understand what this thing is, but there's context to it in the story as well. And I think that's what Alan Moore did really well, was combine the narrative and artistic end of it to be able to present something to you horrific. That's what he does all throughout Swamp Thing. Is he toys with this idea that is figurative, and he gives it life. It manifests itself into something physical, and that becomes the scary part.
Dude, I can co-sign the fact that Providence is a that's horror. That's horror. And it's horror that plays on everything in your mind. And I would encourage any horror enthusiast to check that out. It's such a good book.
So speaking on like horror as being specific and specific feel in comics that the other mediums don't, that would Providence be the one you'd recommend to people, or you got to like know what their taste is?
I think you'd have to know what
Okay.
someone's taste is. I think it's a good question. Because it's there's a lot of essays, there's a lot of letters, there's so much
Mm.
you have to kind of dive into. So that's not like for something that's somebody casual. That's for somebody who one wants to read Lovecraft shit, and then somebody who wants to read Alan Moore shit.
And I would also add that um that book in general is something you couldn't do in another medium because there's no way to translate all the like all that stuff that's in there. You could read it as like, oh, that's just extra content. That's just like those infographics that
Yeah, I'd
Hickman
skip past
does.
it. Yeah.
But if you do read them, they add to the dread and these characters going insane and like you can't get that same experience
Hmm.
watching a movie.
That's another thing that the comics are doing, though. You're controlling the reader is controlling the pace and how they read it. I could also read that book and decide not to read that. I
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
decide not to watch a part of a movie.
And that I think is one of the huge functions that makes horror successful in comics. I think in terms of immersion, it's in my mind video games
Mm.
because they pace things out and you pace things out in terms of immersion and being able to control when the moment happens. Then it's comics, then it's movies, then it's books.
I am 100% with that exact order.
I don't think I can rank them. I think they're different. Nothing's ever no comic has made me feel like how I was when I was a kid when I saw Hitchcock's Birds, and the guy with no he gets his eyes chewed out by birds. Horrified me. But there are comics that have also horrified me in ways. I remember reading some pages of Gideon Falls that were like, oh shit, this stuff is insane. So I don't know. They're just different.
Yeah, I the only medium that I've experienced that I can't think of anything that I found like horrific in that way is probably books,
Yeah.
novels.
There is this good bit that I have with myself where if I ever read the word boo, like outside, like somebody has boo in their decorations for Halloween, I jump. And it's funny to me.
Like, oh,
Yeah, I'll audibly scream if people are nearby.
Oh, so you're doing it on purpose.
yeah,
No, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, on
Okay.
purpose. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
No, it doesn't actually scare me, Sean. It's a deadly combo of letters. Yeah.
I don't know. You're an interesting guy.
Thanks.
Um, thank you guys for listening. What do you think about horror? Do you think that horror works in comics? What are some of your favorite horror comics that I'm sure we didn't mention? I would love to read some more really good horrors. Leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.